Hey folks, my name is Steve D. I've been a game designer for 25 years and I now also run my own company, 10 Star Games. I mostly publish role-playing games, but I also design other tabletop games. Today I'm doing a talk about crossing the streams, taking your tabletop game digital. Over the last 2 years we've actually had 2 companies approach us about making a digital version of our game, which has been really good. We didn't have to go out and look for them. And in one case, they did it gratis because they were trying to build up their online catalog. So I'm going to just answer some questions about how the process was from my side, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dylan, who was also developing the software version of the score for us. And he can talk all about the side of things from the coder's point of view, which I know nothing about because I don't really understand coding very much. But I did have to learn some things for this journey. So yes, I'm going to give this talk. For my first half is from the tabletop designer's point of view. So obviously, if you're looking at whether you want to make a digital port, these are some questions that I think might occur to you. Why would you do it? What do you get? Why wouldn't you do it? What makes it hard? What makes it difficult? What kind of games are good for doing this transfer? Who should you get to do it? And what does it cost? So let's go through some of these. We're going to start with that first one. What do you get out of making a digital version of your game? And these are just 4 things that I think are really sort of obvious that are going to jump out. At least things you might think are there, but we're going to examine them one at a time. So the first one is, of course, extending your audience. Now, it is true that there are a much larger number of video game players in the world. It outnumbers the number of tabletop players by something like an order of magnitude, maybe even 2 orders of magnitude. So if there are 100,000 tabletop gamers in Australia, there might be 10 million video game players. However, you might not be able to access that number of players. In 2024, 19,000 new games were added to Steam, and 80% of them are unplayed or virtually unplayed. 1 or 2 people have played them, maybe the designer and their friends. And these numbers are going up. The percentage was about 75% last year, and it keeps going higher and higher. So you can easily produce something that just sits on the internet and doesn't get found amongst all this clutter and all this noise. It is also more expensive to market in the digital place because you have to hit a wider spread of people, and they have a higher standard of what they consider an ad that is worth paying attention to. You have to design your funnels very carefully when you're dealing with digital market because it is such a range of people who play video games, and it's going to be a lot of the time that you don't want to just talk to every single computer player in the world. You're particularly trying to target people who want board game ports, but that of course might end up just duplicating your audience. What you're hoping for is trying to attract people who might not play your game in the tabletop form if you're trying to extend your audience. And so that is a tricky kind of proposition. You're trying to sort of edge around the people of like, you already play video games, you can also play this. Obviously you can target people who play tabletop ports. We'll talk about that in a minute. The other good thing about video game audience expansion is that it can, if you do make it work, get you more money. And it's also something that the larger world understands more because there's more money and more acceptance and more visibility around it, which means that it might be easier to find marketers. It might have a set protocol that you can follow, and the government and various other bodies understand video games a lot more. There's a lot more support for video games in Australia at lots of different institutions, and therefore you can present a video game as being much more worthy, which can attract grants and funding and attention, and more chances for speaking and presenting things and so on. So there is a potential to gain not just customer audience, but a larger scope of audience in terms of people who see you as an entrepreneur and a business person and a cultural or market leader. You can extend your sales. So this is the idea of like there are people who already buy your game or something very much like it and want to spend more money. So this is actually a big part of why we wanted to do digital ports. There is a significant proportion of your customers, if you have attracted them well, who actually want to give you more money. At the moment, in marketing, when it comes to our leisure time, we are bombarded by choice, and we're often very anxious as a result. And when we find something that we like, we're really, really attached to that, and we want to give it more money, and we want to find more of it, right? We all know this is why, there's so many Marvel movies, right? Once people feel comfortable, I don't have to think anymore, I can keep putting money into this system. So whatever you have, if you have a game that you've convinced some people to buy or back or whatever, you want to keep talking to that market and saying, you can keep giving us money. So having secondary products, which doesn't have to be a digital port, but could be, is a great thing, because you can present it to those people and they'll be like, oh, yes, I like your game already. I probably would like to play it on my phone. I might not, but I'm already attached to the idea, so I'm actually reinforcing that it was a good I want to tell myself that it was good that I bought your card game or your board game, and I'm going to tell myself it was good by buying something else. And I also feel that maybe a good bit of connection. So I can say, oh, yes, this makes me feel more connected to the product and more connected to the designer. So this is a way that you can re-engage your market. And so it can work as a stretch goal for a project, whether if you're doing crowdfunding, and it can therefore look like you're investing more into your product, which again will attract people who want to be part of that movement. They're like, oh, this isn't just one game, this is a lot of games. I feel more excited to participate. It's also a chance to keep connecting, because you can put out the tabletop game, and then a year later you can put out the digital game, and you get to talk to all your market again and go back to your mailing list in a very organic way. Not just, you're still out there, you still like our stuff. You can say, look what we're doing, we're expanding, you're part of that journey. And customers, again, do like to be re-engaged. It also gives you a chance to re-promote. Some of the people who are on the edge before, might go, oh, this time we'll come in. And with crowdfunding, a lot of the times these days with tabletop games, people are doing second editions, which are really mostly just reprints. They'll do a Kickstarter, they'll print 1,000, they'll sell those, and then 2 years later they go, now we're coming back. If you missed it the first time, you can get on board, and this time we have added extras. In this case, it might be a digital version. So it's like, oh, you're getting the deluxe, and if you haven't been in, this is your time to get on. So that is actually probably a much easier route to go through than trying to get to extend your audience. It also is a way that you can reuse things that you've already spent money on. You've already designed the game. You don't have to spend a lot of time necessarily testing it. You've got all the art. You've got all the writing. You've got lots of things that you can use without having to recost. So this is a way for you to hopefully get more money without having to repeat a lot of those costs. You might also get a new design space out of making a digital version. We particularly wanted to put the score onto a digital form because we wanted to do it live on stage, and this solves that problem for us very easily because we can now project on a screen. So there might be something in the structure or the presentation of your game that you haven't been able to tap into, or something in the design that you can now do. Like you might even be able to test your game a lot more if you put it in a digital version. Even if it's a more primitive sort of thing, like even if it's only on Tabletop Simulator, not only does it let you explore different sort of areas, you can test more things. It's worth, I think, if you are doing a digital version, not to simply replicate every possible thing. There are things that digital games do better than tabletop, and vice versa. It's important to accurately reflect your game because it is a selling point, and it is, you want to, for the people who have played the game before, they want to see fidelity, but you can and should see about how you can use the medium differently. So you can, for example, embed a tutorial, which might be useful to people playing the tabletop game. Obviously, digital games check the rules for you, and that can be really useful. A lot of people say things like, until I bought the digital game, I didn't realize I was playing this rule wrong, right? So you have that chance to sort of teach, but you can also store memory. So, for example, With the score, we have in our deck we have a make your own card, but there's only one. With the digital version, you can make all the many millions of cards you want, and you can save them. And you can't save a game in tabletop very much, so we wanted to use some element of digital to do that. You can also control elements invisibly in designs, and that could be important for people's first experiences. Like, we all know that, if that card comes up a bit early, it's going to be a really hard game. You can cheat and actually hide some of those startups so that people have very specific curated experiences with your game. So that means that they might have a better experience for their first game. And again, you're handling setup and takedown and things. And then we go, okay, now that I know that I like this game, I think it's worth my time to go over. So use that space and, be creative with it. See what it might push you to discover new things about your game. And on that note, doing a digital port is a good exercise because it helps you extend your skills, your experience, and your connections. When you are working in the game industry, we tend to divide it very severely between tabletop and digital, but that is a very arbitrary distinction. And certainly everything you learn in tabletop design will be useful in digital, and almost everything in digital will be useful in tabletop. The more you can cross over, the better, and the more you understand how digital games work, the more you'll be able to cross over. You'll be able to work with people in the digital field who can then be contacts and assets for you in the future. When they're designing a game, you can help them. So, for example, Dylan's designing a dice game that is it's going to be digital, at least to start, and I'm going to be helping him out with some of the sort of world building and narrative building of that, because my skills can transfer. So I'm learning about how hard this job is. I'm learning about how it works. I'm learning about the industry. I'm making contacts. Which builds my CV, and if somebody later comes to me and says, we're looking for a narrative designer, I have some computer background that I can now fall back on and go, yes, I have created digital versions and things like that. And it just helps you see a wider design space as well. All right, so those are the good things. What are the bad things about putting together a digital port? The first one is there isn't a rule book, and when people come to learn digital games, they are not expecting to work very hard. They are not expected to be to learn the rules. They usually, in computer games, learn by experimentation. That means you need to build a tutorial. You may need to pay someone to narrate that, create a video, embed it, or design mechanics that teach your game in a different way. And players, they get bored pretty easily. They expect that tutorial to be really handed to them and to teach them bit by bit. To some extent, when you hand a board game to a customer, they know that they should go home and read the rule book and learn, and that there will be a learning curve. Digital has much less expectation of that. So you have to be ready to design around, I need to teach you every step of the way how to do this and make it as seamless and easy as possible. You have some limited control when you work on this. Unless you are also the digital designer, you are working in a relationship with something, which means you don't always get the final say. You can't be a micromanager. You will need, however, to have a good contract. You'll probably need lawyers involved at some level to say who owns what and who can sell what. We had to do a lot of lawyers when we were working with the American company, because they were very keen to use all our art and assets in their promotion. And the original version of the contract, it allowed for them to make derivative games. And they said they didn't want to, but that was the phrasing of that meant that they could have. And we'd had to do a lot of rounds with a lawyer to make sure that we were protected, but also that we couldn't go and make a duplicate. They wanted to be protected as well. So you may need to get lawyers involved. You are going to need a very clear specs description so that you have an idea of what both of you what to expect from the other. you're going to have to cede to their expertise. You might also have conditions that, some games are just going to be harder to do in a digital version. You have to cede to the needs of the platform. You may also need these things to be constantly updated and worked on, which means that's going to take, draw you away of your time, or you're going to have to keep, ceding control. For example, if people, if people have bought my card game and it doesn't work, I can send them a new one. I can say, that's been damaged. I can send you a new one tomorrow. But if the server goes down or there's a bug, I have less control. I can't say, I'll fix that tonight. I have to say, I'll go call my server guy. I'll go call my computer guy. And he might be working on something else. And I can't just say to my customer, it's fixed. I have to say, sorry about this, we have to work something out. And that's a big part of losing control as well, that you can't guarantee everything when you are working with other people and when you're working with things that require, service and maintenance. Testing is more complicated with digital games because you have to test the interface. You have to pay a lot more attention to how users use your game and how it teaches things, as we've already talked about. There's a lot more ways that errors can creep in. Rules can be misinterpreted at a mechanical level, and this requires a lot of stress testing, and it can also take a lot longer because you can't just go home and write on a card and fix it. You have to, again, call that person, tell them what's wrong, give them a proper bug report, wait for them to check on it, make sure they understand the mistake, check that the thing has been repaired. It takes longer. Publishing is a tricky bit when it comes to digital. The actual design of the digital version of the score, that did not take very long. That took maybe a month. Then we've spent about 6 months, maybe 8 now, with the other part, which is getting the various platforms to accept the game and making sure it runs on different systems. So first you've got to make sure, yes, that it will run on anyone's computer with any sort of requirements, or at least figure out what those requirements are. Now then, if you just put it on itch, obviously you can do that, as long as it's got, it will download and unpack and work the correct way. But if you want to put it on Steam, you have to make sure it fits all the requirements of Steam. You have to build a Steam page for it. Steam has a lot of requirements built in so that anyone in the world can click on a Steam link, buy it, and play the game. And then same for Android, same for Apple. Anywhere where you're putting your game up for sale will have very, very strict requirements and will need to double check everything. You'll have to rate your game in terms of its content. You'll have to be very explicit about what's represented in your game. You have to design all your graphical resources and everything to suit their model. You have to jump through whatever hoops they set for you, and there are many of them, and they are complicated, and they are arcane, and it never ends either. So publication into these marketplaces is something that they expect you to do to check on every year. They change the rules often, and you also have to keep paying money often to keep your games up there. So if I put a game out into the marketplace, then I can mostly be content that it will keep going until it sells out. But I could put up a game and a year later, just for various reasons, it doesn't work on the marketplace and be taken down, or I'll run out of money to keep it there and it drops out of publication. So that is a big headache, and it is something to think about, that you have to keep this maintained and you have to have the money to do this. Costs vary. I'm not going to answer the question really about how much it costs, because I'm going to let Dylan talk about that. He can tell you something about the rates that programmers deserve. But there is significant costs to keep these things online, to getting your accounts set up. And you, as we said in the first part, even though you may extend your audience, you may not see a huge amount of that returned, at least in the short term, because you're competing with other games. So the other question then is, what kind of games are best and who should you get to do it if you are looking to port? And the fact is, this is the same question, because the best person to help you with the port is the person who understands your game really well and how it would work in digital. So someone who is porting over a party game is probably going to have a really different approach to someone who's really good at porting over, say, something like Ticket to Ride or a complex war game. They will know their market better. They will know the coding better. They will know the delivery systems better. And so often your best bet is to find people who do like your game or games like it in tabletop who have the digital skills, because they will be able to give you the best insight at all of the questions we've looked at today, including the design ones, because they will have already played your game or something like it, and they have thought about how to solve these things digitally. So that's my best recommendation, is to find people within your space who already like those kind of games, and then find among them those with the digital porting skills. They'll also be the most passionate about creating the best possible experience for the audience as well, which is what you want. As I say, we're going to leave that to other people, but good quality and good maintenance, someone who's continually supporting and being available to make changes means that someone who has a lot of buy-in, and that means they deserve good money to have a good relationship. All right, that's all from me. I'm going to hand over to Dylan now, and he will tell you some more from his point of view. Thanks.